Roger Glover, a remarkable 60-year career. None of us could have predicted the success of Smoke on the Water. Roger Glover. Throughout his nearly 60-year career, Roger Glover has succeeded in virtually everything he has touched. Glover joined Deep Purple just before the band achieved megastardom with classic albums like In Rock and Machine Head. He later embarked on a successful career as a producer, working with giants such as Judas Priest, Rory Gallagher, and Dream Theater, while also excelling in his solo work, the beginning of Deep Purple. Our approach today is no different from those early days. We've always written this way. The band was made up of virtuoso musicians, Ritchie Blackmore, John Lord, and Ian Pace. Ian Gillan and I joined as songwriters, and it worked perfectly. Virtuosos can easily turn music into something too complex for most people. Early success. In those days, if a band lasted more than 4 years, you were lucky. We didn't think about the future then. Looking back now, we see we had one, but we don't dwell too much on the past. In Rock was Glover's first studio album. Before that, he was in a band that only recorded singles. His first performance with Deep Purple was the 1969 Concerto. After Concerto, people saw us as an art rock band and asked, "Where's the orchestra?" But I think In Rock was musically more complex because we had done Concerto. Its success was a complete surprise because in those days, if you weren't played on the BBC, you had no chance. They didn't plan to air us, so we achieved everything on our own, which allowed us to say, yes, we did it. Machine Head and Smoke on the Water. None of us could have predicted the success of Smoke on the Water. It was the last song we thought would become iconic. You never know. It's all up to the people. Solo career. I wasn't a bass player, but a songwriter. That was my main focus. I wrote a lot for episode 6, where Ian Gillan and I started writing together. We joined Purple as a duo. Success in hard rock didn't mean I stopped writing songs. When I left DP, my 1974 album Butterfly Ball was my chance to return to my roots and write songs for their own sake, not to meet expectations. I still write every day. The songs just come to me. I'm grateful I never had to write jingles or pop hits for a career. Some songs don't work for Deep Purple, hence my solo albums. Rainbow. I worked with Rainbow as a producer. During my 6 years away from Purple, I wrote a lot of music. I reconciled with Ritchie despite him being the reason for my absence from the band. We met again in the studio in 76 or 77, and he played me Stargazer. It blew me away. I was always a fan of Dio, whom I discovered in 72 with Elf. Rising was a brilliant album, but it didn't sell well. I was brought in to change the band's fate, and it happened. I played bass and wrote other parts but wasn't officially in the band until the album was finished. Cozy Powell asked, "Why aren't you in the band?" I told him, "I can't just join because I want to. The band has to ask me." But being equals in Purple didn't mean we were equals in Rainbow. Nazareth. We toured with Nazareth a couple of times. I hadn't tried producing yet, but they called and asked if I would produce them. I recorded their single Broken Down Angel in London in 73 while touring with Purple, unaware I would leave the band that summer. It was emotionally tough, and leaving the greatest band in the world left me depressed. I returned to England to rec, but then I saw Broken Down Angel in the top 5 in a music paper. I found a new career. Rory Gallagher, Judas Priest. I knew Rory Gallagher from when he opened for us on several tours. I first worked with him when he was in Taste. Judas Priest wasn't well known and had no hits. When I was asked to produce them, it didn't work out at first because they wanted to do it themselves. I told them, "Go ahead and produce yourselves." I didn't want to work with anyone who didn't want to work with me. A couple of weeks later, they called, "What are you doing now? Can you come to the studio and help us?" Dream Theater. They have a thing for learning someone's classic album and performing it in their own way. They did this with Made in Japan without my knowledge, and then asked if I would mix it. It was a lot of fun because I realized they had seriously studied our album, but put their own stamp on it. It was very gratifying.